Together for a number of years. I'm very pleased to know him, and I'm honored. But there's so much he can bring, not only as a professor, but the chairman of TeleTrusT. Kim Nguyen. Kim is managing director. You joined us for the first time this year. Is that true? Welcome, and we'll look forward to what you have to say. Joerg is vice president, and I think you're what, fourth time. So you've been here at the very beginning. Roemer as well, in the line here, also joined us many years before. Ersin, Uzun, right there in the center. Welcome. This is your first. And of course, Thomas, we're very, very happy to see you as well. So with that, the introductions are there. You can just do a search online to find out all the really good stuff about them. But we're very pleased to have you here, all here together. So anyway, Thomas, I'll ask you to start out and give me your 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So should I take my microphone a little bit? Yeah, I would like to welcome you as well on behalf of Symantec, who is hosting this event for the 3rd time in a row. The last 2 years in Mountain View at our headquarters, and now here it's, I think, a little bit more convenient for you just to step after the event to the Moscone Center. It's just the next block, and yeah, happy to have you all here. From my perspective, so I am responsible for this whole cybersecurity stuff as part of the CTO office from Symantec. As a German, located in Germany, in the beautiful city of Hamburg, and represent, let's say, the German and American view on cybersecurity, since we think it's a worldwide view which is required toward this. In terms of working together, I'm part of the cybersecurity studies team in the Marshall Center, which is a German-American think tank, which might be interesting also, and we deal a lot with these issues across borders. I think that's key for us. From my point of view, if we talk about cybersecurity, we get a lot of frameworks, we get a lot of best practices in the last years. I think we still have a large lack in terms of really well-educated personnel, and staffing is a big problem if you look at the studies from IC² and the Information Security Forum and others. So even if companies in Germany decide, all over the world, to build their own CERT or SOC or CSOC or whatever it's called, Cybersecurity Operations Center, etc., or SOC 2.0, they cannot find the right people for this. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge which we have currently. And I will introduce later some statistics of the new Internet Security Threat Report, and then you can see that attackers are moving much faster than defenders, and I think that's the biggest problem. In terms of the frameworks and regulations, if you look at the different stages, or let's say security domains, which we find there, we have these prepare and assess phase, then the protection phase, which was the old regular domain for IT security industry, then the detection phase, and also the response phase. And I see a big shift from the protection, which is for sure still valid, and it's the security baselining, but a shift towards the better preparation and assessments and the detection mechanisms, so that we can react much faster. And then this leads to a faster response, incident response capabilities, and there, again, we have the lack of educated, well-educated people in that area, and this is, I think, a big issue. That's it for me for now.
Okay, thank you. We're looking forward to more.
Great, thanks. Great to be here, everyone. Roemer. As Chief Security Strategist, I'm responsible for security, compliance, privacy, and safety. And it's one of the things that we need to think about as we move forward and talk about BYO and the Internet of Things and a lot of what's going to be discussed on this panel in terms of changing and moving forward. We have to consider safety as a very key aspect as well. And one of the groups that I'm very much involved in, the Network Function Virtualization Group, part of ETSI, the European Telecommunications Standards Institute, we're focusing on next-gen telco and how this can interoperate, take virtualization out to the telcos. But it's more than just making phones work and allowing people to text. If you think about everything that we're doing right now, our mobile devices, which includes phones, tablets, Internet of Things, sensors we haven't even thought about yet, are going to be on these networks in 2020. And they're going to be controlling several aspects of our digital lives and basically becoming a very key part of our digital persona. Security is going to be even more important as we take a look at this. And so we have to have a level of security automated in. We need to not only have device level policies, and it's grown way beyond just the BYOD and the device focus. We have to think about how all of the different services, all the different applications, all the different networks, and the devices, everything we interact with, help to provide for a level of security, privacy, and safety for us that allow us to live our lives the way that we want to and enhance our lives in ways that we haven't even thought of yet.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Ersin Uzun. I'm from Palo Alto Research Center. You might have heard of it. It implemented a few things that you might know, like Ethernet, graphical user interface, laser printers, optical disks, and more recently like thin film printed electronics technologies and really the semantic search that later get commercialized with Microsoft Bing. So PARC is all about creating impact by dreaming about the future and really create the technology that's changed the landscape that we live in from the technology point of view and foresee the problems that would happen and create technologies that would solve it. At PARC, I'm the Global Director of Technology Solutions for all of our software technologies. I'm the interface between our research team of about 300 people working on software-related technologies and the market. But I also manage the security and privacy research at PARC. My background is from applied cryptography and security. I've been in many other research labs like HP Labs, Nokia Research Center, INRIA in France. And I did 2 startups on commercializing some ideas and getting it into the market. When it comes to security and what I would like to discuss, it's related to what I do on my day job. Really, okay, we are having a lot of security problems today, but what are the technological advances that we see today that can really give us the upper hand in this fight? Because it's an unfair game, right? So as security professionals, we have to be successful 100% of the time, but the attacker has to be successful only once. And that's an unfair game. So can we really create technologies that are designed to be secure from the beginning? That has not been the case, for example, for the networking technology that we use today. We know about it because it was invented at PARC, both Ethernet and the PUP, which is the predecessor of IP. It was designed to access the printer or the mainframe next door. The assumption was that we are already in a secure building. We have a security guard outside, so we don't need security on that communication. And when we use the same technology to connect everything in the world, now we need security, but it was really a patch, it was a hack. So, you know, what are the things that we can do to really change that picture? How can we make security not an afterthought? And there are trends like IoT is happening, and it's really not late for us to design the protocols and the technology we use in these, you know, emerging technologies to be secure. And the market is getting ready for that as well. People are caring about their security, people are caring about their privacy. They can really be a great differentiator for a company that puts out a product. That is what now customers care about. I care about my data, and it's the new currency. So if there are technologies that allows me to keep my private data private, and even, you know, if I'm willing to share it, if I can get some of the benefit, that would be really great. So I really would like to discuss us about The current technologies, trends, and what is coming and how it can help us to develop better privacy and technology, privacy and security technologies in the future, and hopefully get them deployed. So, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Joerg Borchert, and I'm running the business chip card and security within Infineon Technologies in the Americas. And basically, when I describe my business, I'm in an insurance business. The trends I wanted to point out, which I have seen in the last 12 months, are majorly 3 of them. Trend number 1 is that the car is becoming a very important part of the connected world. One car company not too far away described it, basically my car is an iPhone on 4 wheels, which describes the vision certain car manufacturers have. And that means we have now the intersection between safety and security, and Kurt pointed this one out. And it's basically that we have an understanding problem between the two groups, the safety guys and the security guys. We have to bring that together. That's one observation from the last 12 months. The second one, which is related to my other job, which is not paid as the president and chairman of the Trusted Computing Group, is that I see an uptick of hardware root of trusts which are implemented. And it can be from a smart card to a TPM. We see that across the implementations. And last observation is, it was about when in 2011, when I started that job as a DCG, and people said, you have to bring the pieces together. And that means bringing together network protocols down to the endpoints, to the sensors. And the first time in this time where I had to endure this, I see this year that's really start to happening, that the companies from Germany, from the US are starting to.
Yeah, thanks. It's an honor for me to be here. So, coming from the German Bundesdruckerei, which is the printing house, and we are not only doing printing, we do much more right now, so issuing passports, ID cards. So basically it's clear that from my perspective, the handling of management of identification of IDs is a vital part of what will be a future solution for what we now see as a big strength in cybersecurity. And there are 3 points. I think it's a good thing always to have 3 things to say. So first thing, as I said, I think much of the security that we see will lie in the secure handling of IDs. And even if we speak now about cars that are iPhones, much of the user-based security still relies on username password. And I'm not beginning this funny games about who of you is using this password for how many accounts. The second thing ties it also with what Joerg said. So I think there is a need for secure hardware. We need some secure hardware tokens, and we had them already for many, many years, but people don't like to use them because there's no usability with them. So security always comes in as something, it's an impediment, it's not easy to handle. I think in the last year we've seen great advances here, which are for me mainly related with the name FIDO Alliance. And there's also for TeleTrusT a big association with FIDO. In the last 2 years we managed to get some contact with some of the players from FIDO, and we invited them to the German groups last year, and there will also be a workshop this year. And I think what's so interesting about FIDO is that it's an approach that is featuring usability, one of the most important things. And I think FIDO is probably the best yet we have at the moment as a globally accepted authentication technology. So I think that's an interesting thing. And the third point that I would like to make is, I don't think the problem is that we cannot deal properly with IDs. I think we have too many IDs. So every one of you has probably several IDs using different passwords, maybe only one password, in which case I would like to come forward. Please tell me this password. And so the question really is, how can we deal with all this? And I think one interesting point is there are cases where it might be interesting to actually have a connection between your official ID and some of the others. Not in all cases, but I think some strengths will come from this point that there's two worlds of your official ID and of this many artificial IDs you have, that they can interact and we could control this on the basis of secure hardware. I think there's a great chance that in the next year we will see a big advance in cybersecurity, which is actually something that you can, as an individual user, can experience. And I think this is a quite interesting and exciting perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me start with IT security situation. About 30 years ago, I wrote my diploma thesis on IT security. Since that time, the IT security problem become bigger and bigger, not smaller. And when we see what is the problems, we have too many vulnerabilities in our software, insufficient anti-malware protection, insecure website, no identity management, and smartphones will be new, come with new attack vectors and so on. And if you see, what is the situation? We know the problem, but today's approach can't handle the challenge, and we always asking for, have been demanding for new, more intelligent IT security technology, but it's always difficult. And for example, we have a microcon with isolation separation technology, with cryptographic functions that can easily help to make the IT systems much more secure. But I think that's the problem, and I would like to give you some new ideas of TeleTrusT, which we believe can help to make much more business with US companies and also improve the risk situation. And so what's the background? The background is that, of course, IT market leader come mostly from the US, but we have a lot of IT security strengths in Germany, and we have comprehensive experience in data protection. And we have successful SME-dominated IT security industry with very modern and sophisticated IT security solutions. We have extensive and competent IT security research and high experience in IT security evaluation. And very important, we have an open crypto policy. And that's the basics of reliable IT security solution. And what can we do with this situation? And TeleTrusT promotes the idea of IT security replaceability. And I see the idea of IT security replaceability is that the IT market leader offer open interfaces which makes the replaceability of IT security very easy. For example, a German hard disk encryption instead of BitLocker, or a German IP encryption module instead of Cisco encryption module. So I think we have a lot of benefits if we see it in this way, and the benefits is that the US IT market leader can improve their trustworthiness because they use trustworthy IT security technology from Germany, and the customer can decide which technology they want to use from the US or from German. So it's quite easy, and of course for the German IT security industry it's an easy access to the global market. So I believe that is a really win-win situation. And we also introduced the idea of categorization of IT systems in effect or protecting class, and this idea we believe will help to put the IT security replaceability in operation. So we believe that this will be a very good basic for a common successful business, but also help to improve the risk situation. Thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's sort of puts things in perspective as far as all the things that we're going to talk about for the next 45 minutes or so. So I'd like to start out with you, Thomas. You talked about the frameworks, and there's a lot of these, the CertCCs, the SOCs, are they responsive? Are they working? Or are they things that we still need to do more with? You inferred in the beginning that that's not enough. Is it enough?
Yeah, it's not enough in a sense of visibility, first of all. So some of these certs have, as I mentioned before, limited capabilities in terms of staffing, but also in terms of expertise. They can run, let's say, for a large global company, sometimes only 8x5 and not 24/7. That's one issue. The other issue is what kind of data do they have and gather, let's say from open source environments, but from their own telemetry, from their own log correlation and so on, to really create, let's say, an early warning system for them, so that they see that something is going on, that there's an anomaly detection and so on. And I think we will see much more interaction between companies, but also between, let's say, vendors, institutions and companies, to have a joint approach on these kind of threat intelligence sharing, which I think is the right way to go, because otherwise the companies have limited visibility and cannot see if something is going on, if they are attacked, and cannot have proper risk assessments on that.
So Kurt, on that topic, the whole issue of information sharing, particularly relative to attacks and looking at it from, I forgot I need to stay in the mic. How does that work? I mean, is there any reason not to share information? Is there government restrictions or the law enforcement implications, or how would that work?
Yeah, information sharing for security is kind of an oxymoron, because we've been trying to protect the information for so long and not let it get outside the company. It's really turned into an interesting discussion. Most organizations do not share their security information, particularly their configurations, their security breaches, or even things like their risk profile. And it makes it difficult, because as security practitioners, unless we have peers that we can interact with and be able to share this data and interact with them, at a very deep level technically, as well as at the business level, we're not understanding how to best protect the sector, our own customers, and everything else that's going on in this global economy. So when we take a look at information sharing, I believe that it is essential. It has to be done at the right level, though. You're not going to share your sensitive intellectual property. You're not going to share certain aspects of your configuration. But you can share information about breaches or about common threats, threat intelligence, the threat landscape, how it's evolving, what you've seen happen over the last days, weeks, years that have been very highly targeted, so that you're helping others avoid problems and properly mitigate the risks. Much of this is dictated by governments as well, and you've seen some of the new initiatives in the United States. President Obama signed the directive a couple months ago to help share information within the U.S. and between U.S. companies. There's a lot that needs to be worked out there, but it's great to see it happening. It's been happening in subsectors of the communities for years. Banking and financial in particular have been very strong in terms of sharing information. As well, most of the technology companies, we have the phone numbers of each other's CISOs and CTOs and pick up the phone whenever something really substantial happens, like a new DNS breach or a new attack against SSL. It's really driving us forward quite a bit as we share this info. But it also helps us get to some of the key business problems. And if you take a look at what the PCI Security Standards Council has done, within the last week, they released PCI DSS 3.1 and the supplements associated with it, basically deprecating SSL and deprecating old TLS. So unless you're on TLS 1.2 or above and associated encryption algorithms, you can no longer be PCI compliant with something you're rolling out, and there's sunset dates for the rest. So it's not just a technical issue, it's really hitting us at the business level, and it's great to share that info to arrive at the right conclusions.
So Ersin, two questions for you. You get to be the lucky one as we get down the line here. The first question is, what can we learn from an event, an incident takes place, whether it's a large one like the Sony event or a smaller one? And the second part of the question is, where does the technology change? We've seen Heartbleed, and we've been using SSL for years and years and years, and all of a sudden we have a vulnerability. And we can't close it that easily. How do those two fit together?
Let me start from the second question. When we look at where the security is going, right now it is more about, today, this is the near-term trend. Instead of looking at how we can protect this perimeter, how we can prevent people getting in to our network, that is changing, because guess what? We learned that that's pretty much impossible with the current technology that we are using. So it is more about today, okay, let's try to do that, but we also need to have the technology. Once they get in, we need to be able to detect it fast and really do the audit trail to be able to understand what has happened, to be able to patch it correctly. So the security research is moving towards from really, trying to protect attackers from getting in, but more like, okay, assume that they get in, how can we keep operating? How can we increase the resilience of the system? So that's one trend that we are seeing. The second trend is, we talked about information sharing, and really there are more than 10 startups that I know in the Valley trying to get this going. How can we share information across these entities, private companies, so that they can take advantage of what the other companies are already experiencing? Because if you look at the security logs, it is like an attacker attacking this company and using the same vulnerability. Pretty much a few hours later, they are attacking another company using the same vulnerability. So if they had exchanged information timely, then the damage could have been minimized. But this is not happening, and it's not easy to make it happen, because there are many concerns a private company has about information sharing. Kurt already mentioned one, they want to keep intellectual property and other private information private. And there are others, there are legal concerns. So if I share information and somebody gets evidence that I got attacked, what are the legal consequences? There are competitive concerns. Other companies might learn what I'm doing on. Or working on, or they might take advantage of some of the information that I leak. There are reputation concerns. So if I leak information that I get attacked, my customers would be unhappy. And there's also the not very mentioned concern that if I share information, what I get back. I'm sharing information in an honest way, but I might end up getting crap from the other side. And you don't really see what you will get until you get it, right? And interesting enough, my group actually just completed and published a research result that showed that you can, for example, do information sharing in a way that you can do the data quality assessment before learning the data, so you know what kind of data you would be getting if you get into sharing information. And even in these very restricted scenarios that you only share what the other party already knows. We call it private set intersection. I will not go into the crypto details, but we found a way that can efficiently allow a company to check what I'm seeing as anomaly, is anybody else seeing it? If they are seeing it, they can verify. If they are not, they will not learn anything about what you're looking for. And I think technology can really help in few years by making these schemes more practical to enable and overcome the risks that come with the sharing.
Yeah, and one quick add-on to that, for those who haven't seen the President's cybersecurity legislation, There was also a mention of an incentive of reduced legal liability for companies that share information. We're waiting to see what that really entails, but that will also remove many of the barriers.
Yeah, but you know, I think I mentioned 5 or 6, so that's only on one of those. Yes. So the others are still there. And I believe really that's something that technology can help. And your first question, what can we learn? We can learn quite a bit, but usually it is too little too late. If a company gets attacked, it takes about what, a month now for a you know, an outsourced company to get in and really tell you what happened with about 60–70% confidence. And you know, because most of the stuff is already gone, they erase their trails. We need better technology again to really do the audit trails and catch the attacks in a timely manner and share that information. If you look at the industry initiatives like Red Sky Alliance, it's great. They're enabling some sharing of information, or ISAs, but it goes like this, the workflow. Briefly, as a company, I suspect of something. Somebody, a human usually, looks at that and verifies that it's an attack. It creates a signature of it, makes sure that everything is removed about the company configuration and the information, sends it to an alliance. Alliance verifies that it is real, and then sends it to all the other companies. Guess what? It has been 2 weeks. Everybody already got attacked in that vertical, and the hackers are using another vulnerability already. So we need to really up our game in that space. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. In this area, when we start looking about the recovery and response and everything, if you have the information of what happened, how do you treat that internally? For example, it's felt by many that the #1 attack point is a phishing email or a spear phishing email. That's how you get into the system and drop malware and things of that nature. If you were able to cut down the access for malware, would that make a difference? And if so, how do you then share that when you see an attack that's unsuccessful?
So I'm not an expert in it because I don't deal with our corporate network, but the thing which is clear, when you get new malware and you get attacked to the core of your enterprise, recovery is really a hard problem. We are thinking about that direction from an R&D perspective to build solutions, and so far this is really the hardcore problem when you have to restart from a measured kind of state which was at that time trusted. And you have to say here the restart has to happen. And the restart and the solutions so far which we have seen, you have out of bounds kind of communication, and out of bounds means it's a side channel, so to speak. So you open with that one automatically also attack vectors. So this topic is for our R&D a hard problem and not answered yet. And we haven't seen it even in the overall community. But maybe PARC and others from the academia can contribute to that.
Ken, you want to pick up that thread?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I think, for me it ties very much also to this question of authentication and of handling IDs to know whom you are letting into your network and also to lock down what you've been doing. And I think there's a lot to do here. It's probably not so much related to technology, of course. I think cryptography and also secure hardware has been there in abundance, so it's all there. But people don't like to use it. And it's basically not because they are not aware that it might be useful, because it's simply too complicated. And so I always take the example of my 2 boys. They are 5 and 8 now, and 3 years ago, bought first Apple product of our family. We have lots now. And it was an iPad, and so I tried to prepare that and put some photos on, and then my wife unwrapped it, and we saw all these photos, and then we said, okay, what do you do now? And coming from a Microsoft world, I looked for a mouse and a right click and something, there's nothing there. And then our smallest son, who was 1.5, just came up and he swiped. And I think this is what we need for security as well. We need it to be so easy that the youngest member of the family realizes as the first one how to use it. And I think this is really at the core. It's not technical. I mean, of course, we can speak about elliptic curves for the whole day. Don't worry, you won't. I won't, at least. But I think we have to win the people to actually make use of it. And there's still lots of other stuff that we have to do, but we have to make a start with the actual users, making them hard authentication happen as a start from this end.
Yeah, and this is not just a question of the users. It's using as a broader approach.
It's an ecosystem.
Yes, if you look at, let's say, for example, web servers in the world, 70% of the web servers in the world are vulnerable to known attacks. 20% of them are vulnerable to critical attacks. So you can just use a video in the internet and see how it works, and then everybody can do it. You don't have to be an expert in hacking or so. And this is the reality. And so we need some more sense of responsibility on the side where the infrastructure is managed and hosted, from my point of view. Not only the users have to learn also a lot, but the administrators have to learn a lot, from my point of view.
Yeah, that actually is a great point. It's in my heart because I did usable security research for years, and I remember a user study I did more than 10 years ago now. I looked at how people are reacting. It was one of the first usable security studies, how people reacted to security pop-ups. And we quickly realized that nobody reads them. If there is an OK or a cancel choice, they choose OK. If there is yes or no, they choose yes. Nobody actually reads them, simply because they get conditioned in a way that if they say cancel or no, that that whatever they want computer to do never happens. Because security is never the goal, right? Security is something that needs to be there while you're trying to do something else. That's why it needs to be transparent, it needs to be automated. And industry and even academia is just realizing this fact and combining ethnography, human-computer interaction, human data interaction together with security. But this is going to take a few years because we designed our security protocols in a way that it requires the right input from the user at the right time in many cases. If they do not give the attention that the protocol needs, if they give the wrong thing, it's a grave effect for security. You cannot recover from that. That was the case, for example, for Bluetooth standard when I was working at Nokia Research Center. We fixed it in Bluetooth 2.0. But in the first one, any mistake that the user makes would basically make the whole thing insecure. And you cannot design things in a way that you have to expect the humans as more reliable than the machines, right? So that's not the world we live in. Thank you.
Norbert, a lot of the things that have said in the last few minutes goes to an end user and a person and developing something that keeps them from hurting themselves, so to speak. I think another example similar to this, a dear friend and works at Microsoft, he was telling a story one time about his 8-year-old son and his 81-year-old mother, that she had a doctorate degree in education. He was a small boy, but every time the pop-up came up, they wanted to click OK because it stopped them from getting to where they're going. From a research perspective, how can you, maybe a little bit of a stretch for your experience, but how do you unwind what people are conditioned to do that really undermine the security?
Yeah, sorry, but I first would bring some new ideas in and try to answer your question. I think we have to see we have a really unbalance between hacker and defender. So if I'm a hacker, and you see from the hacker point of view, and who are companies, I look for the easiest vulnerability. And if I have one companies, you have maybe 100 vulnerabilities, and say, okay, I need only one vulnerability I can handle, and then normally I can successfully hack the company. And if you see it from the defender point of view, you say, okay, I have 100 vulnerabilities, and I have to fix everyone. And that's the question, how can we exchange information? And I see, or I believe, we have to see it from the business point of view. We need a business model, and if the business model offers higher security, less risk with less money, then sharing is that easy. It's quite easy, and I think that's how we have to look into this issue. And the problem with people, of course, it's always a problem that we have to find a way how to bring all stakeholders together. And I think if you drive a car, you have to be sure that the manufacturer gives you a good car with good brakes, but you understand directly that you have influence on your life. So if you drive faster, then of course you can die in your car. And that's the same in the internet. We have to see that the companies which offer the IT technology have to do what is possible, and that's not the situation today. But the user have to see I'm part of this game, and I have to bring my part to make me and my values and my privacy secure. And I think it's not only the people, it's all together. We have to see, and we have to bring this idea into the world. That's my belief.
Okay. Thomas, round two. Okay. We talked about the people part of this, and when you were talking about the CERT and the operations centers and this in the very beginning, you had mentioned something about the response education. How do you get people to understand what they need to do to respond? Is it a corporate business impact analysis, a disaster recovery plan? Where does this fit, number one, and also who's responsible for it? Because I think people have different views on this.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, within the company, it needs C-level attention. So this needs to be a decision made by the management. And it will be a business decision at the end of the day, for sure. Not only because of staffing and so on, but also what is really important, what would I like to protect, what would I like to spend to protect this, what is this worth, and so on. And a lot of people did something in the past on this, but probably not enough. And I still see a lack in incident response policies because the overall approach in terms of disaster recovery and business impact is not made properly in a risk assessment perspective, from a risk assessment perspective. That I think is still a big issue. And one thing I would like to point out, following what you said, Norbert, is if you look at the educated people dealing with cybersecurity coming from universities, so where do they go? Do they go to the side where they have to protect the company or so? Because this is not really a very fulfilling job if you have to do everything right all the time instead of being right once at one time. So I'm not saying that they move to the dark side, they don't. But they, most of them are all employed at, let's say, consulting firms doing penetration testing, because this is very fulfilling. You find always something, you are always successful, and I think that's a problem. I would wish that more from these young, talented guys would they take the responsibility and move to the companies and work in the CERT also, do forensics there and other things.
So Kurt, on the CERT question, how do you get education to be a member of a CERT team? You know, as I think Thomas had mentioned initially, when we talk about CERTs, not all CERTs are created the same.
You have the national certs, you have university certs, you have business certs. Some have a great deal of technical capability that is what they're known for. Others basically go out and take the alerts that they get and translate them into their native language. How would you create a cert to be effective and really make a difference in this?
That's really a great question, Howard. I think when most people take a look at creating a CERT, they look at it in terms of addressing vulnerabilities and specifically thinking about technical vulnerabilities. I would actually back up and say, what's the business trying to do? What are our use cases? What's going to be acceptable loss? What are the things that we should raise the 5-alarm fire flag on versus what are the things that are minor annoyances and we don't even bother reporting on them because everybody's already got it. There's just way too much information these days on background noise and number of attacks and number of DDoS floods. What's it really doing? What's the true impact to the business? I think that's definitely where I'd start. And in terms of helping with the education, it really gets to making it personal. You have to understand that many people in business hear this constant flood of background noises and you got a patch or Armageddon's going to happen or all these bad things are out there. There are many folks that have been raised in an environment where they haven't had to deal with the attacks. They haven't seen the direct impact of it. And it's very similar to being raised in a privileged neighborhood where, life's pretty good. You don't have a lot of bad things that have happened. You hear about them, you might see some stuff on the news, but it's not real to you. But then you deal with the people who grew up in bad neighborhoods and the bad things have happened to them, or they've happened to them directly or happened right in front of them. They know what the impact of these issues can be. We have to get some of that information through to the people who are not only operating the technical aspects of the CERT, but also interfacing with the business so that they can realistically say, hey, here's something that is really going to be a problem. We've got a plan for that. We've got to get that out there and reduce all the background noise that takes our eye off the ball.
Ersin, you had mentioned during your opening comments about people care about privacy like they never have before.
I said it's starting.
Oh, starting, okay. I missed that word somewhere. It's starting, and I think in some areas it's starting more than others. How does privacy and security play together in this?
Given to my formal security education, I see privacy as from the technical point of view as a subfield of security. But obviously, when you say privacy, there is all the legal baggage that comes with it, because you need to define what privacy is. So what is private, and based on that definition, then everything changes from the technology point of view. But Kurt mentioned something interesting. When bad things happen and people see the impact, then they start to pay more attention to it. And we are seeing these bad things happening to people. They, have this, one picture taken of them while smoking some funny stuff, and then their career is over. All the money that's coming from advertisements is now done. Although he might be a great athlete, so who am I talking about? Or other instances where people really get heavily impacted on their private life. I've read and heard about families getting destroyed because of private information not really being kept private. And as these things happen and gets publicized, people are already starting to pay attention, I think, and they will pay more and more attention to it. Yes, the millennials, the new generation seems to be caring less in certain aspects of their lives. But on the other hand, they are the ones that use encrypted messaging services and email clients that actually sends emails that disappear after a while. So it seems like they are actually caring, right? So when you look at the trend that we see in them. I think sooner or later companies will realize that privacy can really give them the differentiator that they are looking for in the marketplace. I want to provide, I don't know, an email service, right? Well, how I'm going to compete with all those free services? Probably one thing that can really differentiate is usability as one obvious one, but privacy could be another one. And I think we will start to see a shift where companies really start to take advantage of emerging technologies and create products differentiated by privacy. But on the other hand, from the business side of the things, I start to hear a lot of complaints about companies. There are different privacy laws across different states. There are different privacy laws across different continents and countries. Now, as a global company, you might get a court order in the US saying that you need to disclose this person's data. The person might be a European citizen. Now, if you disclose it with the upcoming privacy law in Europe, you might be violating European law. If you don't, then you're violating US law because there's a court law. So how are you going to operate in this environment? So there is this whole legislative issues that we need to deal with to really, allow the companies to be able to operate and differentiate themselves in providing better security.
Yeah, I remember a case in which, in the United States, there was a child pornography case in which it was an online, and they told the company, leave it up, we're investigating it, and the country was being hosted. The law enforcement agency arrested the general manager because they told them to take it down and they didn't do it. So that's a classic example of where international law, and we hope to fix that with the Budapest Convention, the Council of Europe Convention, which is now 12 years past. We really need to update some of those and really put it into it. And the nations have to recognize they need to do more work on it.
So, when you talk about the privacy and security, you mentioned TPM and smart cards and everything. How does that going to play into it? Are we doing enough with the technology?
Interesting enough, I had this morning a discussion with a major OEM. And for example, technology like self-encrypting drives are available. It would protect data, it would take care of the sensitivity of data, but it costs $50 more. And that is the hurdle which we have at the moment. It goes back to the topic of your threat profile, which you have personally, how you value data, and then it's coming back to an insurance case. What's the probability that you are getting attacked? What is the attacker? The likelihood, and what is at stake? How important is this data for you? And we heard just very interesting examples. So the consumer has then to make a very educated guess. What is available? Should I do it? And in a corporate environment, there is another equation is obviously there. And I would say, especially in the companies we are working, IP is the most important part. It is not about factories, it's all at the end of the day IP. So from our own perspective, I can say that self-encrypting drives are rolled out entirely across the company to keep these crown jewels. So on the consumer side, I think there's still a lot of education to happen. And I think economies of scale have to happen so that the prices are getting down and that the benefit is better advertised and better communicated to the consumer.
Yeah.
I'd like to...
Oh, here, please.
Yes, encrypted drives might be costing more, but if you look at TPMs or secure hardware, it's actually in our devices today. most of the Qualcomm chips come with, you know, a secure environment that, you know, that uses the same processor in 2 modes. Microsoft, all the PCs that you have probably have a TPM chip. Most tablets have it. So I think, you know, Kim made a good point there. The hardware is there. It is not easy to use it. It is not really, you know, easy to take advantage of that. And yes, we are seeing more and more software using it, but it is very slow. And it also goes back to the point that everybody is trying to minimize the costs. If you change your existing software to take advantage of that, it's additional cost. So we need the market demand for it and the pressure to really get those technologies taken advantage of. And TPM is a great example. It can really make many of the security problems that we see today practically solvable.
So when you look at the TPM smart card, strong authentication, something that earlier we were talking about, the reason a lot of the intrusions take place because we're not doing strong authentication, we're not doing identity management. Why aren't we? What do we as businesses, we as consumers need to do to make this sort of demand, if you would, to say we want this sort of technology? It may cause one more mouse click or one more swipe, but we want it.
I think one of the big questions is that security has not been thinking in terms of systems, of ecosystems. So we've been thinking, I think, for a long time about the strengths of algorithms and implementation of tasks and security things and evaluation, and it's all good. It's all very, very valuable and very good, of course. But with these new technologies that everyone is handling now, they think in ecosystems. They build a complete system, and the device you have is only a part of the whole game. But the game is already there. The whole game is there. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many of the very excellent technologies, for example in ID management, there's so much ID management technology available, and no one is doing it because it's always only a building block. And these guys and other guys over there in Mountain View, they have systems running. You are part of the system, and of course you probably never leave the system again once you're in, but at least you're in it and everything works. You don't have to consider settings and how do I do it. And I think this is really the big challenge. How do we move the security business to this ecosystem thinking? And getting away from the little boxes with stuff in. And it's all very valuable, and we need to do it. And I've been, for training a mathematician, so I've been thinking very hard about this stuff. But in the end, the elliptic curves are not winning the game. The system is winning the game. And the system works, and the system has the appropriate level of security designed into it. That's what we want to achieve. And I think this is still a long way to go. But we see, I think at the moment, that I think the guys and the companies and the thing that have the system running, they win the customer, they win the game. I think that's what we have to do with security as well. Think of it as a system.
Thank you. Norbert, before we go to the audience, this is probably a good place to hear from you about the future. Because there's a lot of security that's being, I mean, look at the population of RSA over all these years. Look at the number of people that now know it's security, know the word, let alone know how to implement it and stuff. Where's the future? What are the things that we need to be doing to actually next year or 5 years from now have this conversation in this room or some other room that says, it worked, we did the right thing? What do we need to do?
Okay. Maybe we can divide it into parts. If you see me as a customer, I think it's always a problem because you know, if I see my flat, my house, I have my bedroom, and I have my privacy in my bedroom, and if I look into the internet, I can't find a bedroom which is protected. Because the reason is we have a business concept paying with my personal information, and you know, that's a problem that the company which offer nice internet services, email service or search services, ask not for money, ask for my private information. And here is the question, how can we put all together and say, okay, that's fine, but I'm willing to pay, but then I have my privacy. And I'm not sure how can we bring that to the company. How can we ask Google and say, okay, I like your search machine, but let me pay, please let me pay. And that's the reason. And I think for the company, that's not really difficult to say, okay, we can improve our security. But at the end, here it's also not easy to bring security in standard technology. So if you see what should be the right way is that all the big companies, all the market leader bring security direct in their technology. So that we have encryption and authentication direct in operation systems, in databases, and what we have to do today is we have to see we have some problems, we have some threats, and how can we fix it with solutions from Bundesdruckerei or from other companies, from Symantec. But the future has to be that the companies offer total systems which have a lot of functions, security functions, which we can choose. Okay, that's very important for me, encryption, integrity, privacy, or whatever. But we also are not really sure how can we bring this idea in operation.
Thank you.
Okay. Just to add one thing, I like the idea of thinking of the internet as different rooms, but in fact is that the internet even removes the privacy from your physical house. If you have, let's say, a television in your bedroom, which I don't have, but some people might have, I've heard so. And this television listens to every spoken word in that room, just to get, let's say, instructions or so. And these spoken words are sent to a cloud service, and the privacy is even gone in your physical home.
You know, it's one of the issues that's for always a long time that we try to categorize what the internet, what various websites are mean to us, but the bottom line is, I think you two put it in very simplest terms. It's not what it looks like. You don't box it out there. It's just part of a very, very large enterprise that we use.
And it's dynamic.
It's dynamic. That's true. That's very true. Question back here.
Microphone.
Wait for the microphone.
Hi there. First, thank you very much for speaking today. My name is Simone, and I am a breach coach and attorney. And my question is, how important is really training in security? For example, 70% of all breaches in the United States have a negligence component where an employee either clicked on that wrong email or was subject to a social engineering scheme. We have wonderful security technologies in place that are not used properly, or that have vulnerabilities that go back to people. So in the future, do you think that training of those employees would and could prevent some of the vulnerabilities that we're seeing?
Who wants to take that? Norbert.
I believe if you see the goal we have to follow, we need a culture development. So we need people which have the culture and willing to be secure. And of course, to come to this culture, we need trainings for our kids, for our employees, for everybody. But I really believe we have to define which culture we need, and then to find out how can we, well, what is the way to come to this kind of culture.
Yeah, training is going to be very important, but it also has to be combined with automation. So as you train people on various policies, things they should do, you should help to automate it as much as possible so that they're incented to do the right things, they automatically happen. It's going to be even more important for us as this gets deeply personal with the Internet of Things. An attacker can turn on your washing machine remotely, turn the water on, click the little button to open the door, flood your basement. If you're wearing healthcare related Internet of Things and you're getting therapies through those, they could give you an entire week's dose of your blood pressure medicine or your insulin or your beta blockers or ACE inhibitors 3 o'clock in the morning while you're sleeping. What does that do? I mean, the more that's connected, the more we've got to have the education so that people know what the bad things are and what they can do about it, but also the automation to help keep those things from happening as the threat becomes increasingly personal and increasingly physical.
But I think you made a great point that, you know, automation is really the long-term solution to that, because as human, we are always going to be the weakest link. So what damage we could do should be limited. You can, however, or how much training you give might not matter if you're having a bad day. If your mother just died, you know, you don't care, you know, or it might be even going to the extreme of insider threats. You know, you might have an employee within the company that might actually create damage. So how you can minimize that is by really making this security transparent and automatic, and it's not dependent on the human in the loop. So I think that's the long-term solution.
Yeah, just one add-on that we've been talking for a number of years, particularly the medical devices, which is a whole nother panel like this, where it may be tremendously valuable to have an IP-enabled pacemaker for someone that needs one, and an alert goes off in the doctor's office that says, hey, this person is having some heart issues, and they push the button to increase the voltage and get it to do something, and that's really wonderful. But I don't want a hacker doing that. And so those are the things that I don't think we've actually put a lot of emphasis on. We're starting to see now, wait a minute, somebody could really do that. We need to deal with it. Next one.
Okay, Mike here. Hello everyone, thanks for this panel. My name is Florian. I have a bit of a cynical question. Since you work at a high level in cybersecurity, would you sometimes hope that that a massive breach would happen so that people start to realize that security is actually important before, like you guys are talking about it, before hackers can start to directly engage in people's lives with medical devices, cars, or smart cities? So do you think there's a better way to give a kick in cybersecurity compared to this massive leak? And the second question, how would you compare the impact in cybersecurity between hardware backdoors and software loopholes?
I would presume the first question was the belief that there have not been major cyber events take place that have caused people to pay attention. Interesting concept. Who wants to take it?
Yeah, so my question back would be, how big should they be? Because I think I've seen a lot of big ones in the last year and the years before and today, which from my perspective were big enough, let's say, as a warning for everybody. But obviously you're right, it's not warning enough so far. We don't want more breaches to have a compelling event or so to sell more software in that space. That's not the case. I think it's quite enough at the moment, and we try to make it less, not more.
Anyone else?
Yeah, but I think it's also a cultural thing. I think a lot of stuff happens. What I find always so mind blowing is that no one cares. And I think this is really this question of culture. So if I tell you now to hand me your house keys and I will keep them safe and I will return them safely after this event, I don't know how many people will do it. And so this is acceptable not to do it. Yes. But it's acceptable, or it's even chic, to have the same password for all your accounts. And this is, I think, this really is this cultural question, and this, I think, is the reason why no one cares. That no one has this feeling of what he's doing. So I think it's quite clear when we take this door key example that you're saying, oh, this is a little doubtful what I'm doing, but no one cares about this password thing. And this is, I think, what we do. And if we don't achieve that, then we don't get this level of awareness with the people. Probably then maybe when the whole country goes into Armageddon, as called. But I think this is really the thing. We don't have this culture of, we don't have the level of understanding, actually.
it's interesting that as they get bigger, people seems to care less. They feel helpless, and it is now something that not only happened to them but everybody else. So it's becoming normal, which is actually very dangerous. People that get their identity stolen after that can go through a real big headache, and then those people usually change how they select services, how they treat their digital information after that. But until something really hurts happen, some of those big leaks are actually giving people the sense that this is normal in this age. It should not happen though.
Related to that, I mean, I fully agree. People are getting used to it. And why are they getting used to it? Because normally the corporations have to cover the expense. And secondly, there are cybersecurity policies today out which you can sign up to as a company, obviously, to cover your risk. So the risk is with this kind of methods, it's getting kind of covered up and is a non-event anymore.
Yeah, but it's only covered out due to the policies which I see at the moment from the insurance companies, if you have done the right things, so if you have closed the door and all the things which apply in the physical world as well. So people have to do much more, but I agree, it's mitigating risk or transferring risk from one point to the other. Correct. This will change, by the way, when we have more digital physical connections. Security and safety was one of the things which we have to do. So I don't want that somebody will die in a self-driven car or so. Don't get me wrong, but this will probably happen.
Norbert?
We also have to see that, if you see it from the government point of view, we always have the issue that a lot of intelligence services over the world want to have access to all information and to all server in the internet, and therefore they manipulate IT and IT security technology and make the internet insecure. So maybe we have also to decide what we really want, and if we can make the decision that we want to have secure IT and IT security technology, that makes it a lot easier and more secure. And it have to be clear, we can't have both. So we have to decide if it's necessary to look into the information, or is it more important to have secure technology for all hackers in the world.
It's interesting, just one quick comment on that, in 1998, President Clinton signed an executive order about cybersecurity. In 2003, President Bush signed a national strategy. In 2011, we did 3 strategies about identity management, education, and international strategy. But yet we constantly get the question is this the wake-up call? And yet we've been waking up at all hours of the day and night with this for the past 20 years. And I don't know when the big one would change things, and I hope it doesn't. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Oliver Christ. I'm running a medical device consulting company based in Hamburg, Germany. And I really enjoy your examples you bring during the panel here. And I would like to follow up on these examples, okay? Let's go to car driving, yeah, and traffic. Yeah, you used it a couple of times. In one way, you used it as a kind of mechanism to solve the problem. If we have any traffic jams, de facto, we have now a kind of real-time update to all participants in driving in the Bay Area. Don't go to 880, it's bumped. Yeah, and we have a certain way to deal with it. If I understand correct, that's one way of solution. If somebody is doing actively a kind of attack, and we could detect it and broadcast it to the rest of the community in the same pattern, attack is not possible. We heard the question about training. It's a serious first question, okay? Do we need a kind of user license, yeah, to go to the internet? It's not a joke, it's a serious question. And the second question is more to the world of medical devices and healthcare. What would you say is the current level of protection of you as hospitals and patients with regard to the threats we're talking about? Pacemaker is one thing, electronic health record another thing. Where we are in a scale, give me just an order of idea. Thank you.
Anyone want to take the driving 880?
I would like to comment on the driver's license for the internet. I don't think that it's possible to do it for everybody as well. However, I think it would be great if people understand also the technical stuff a little bit more and don't think it's just magic happens behind the scenes. I think we need something like a driver's license for people who are running infrastructure. Coming back to my example from before, where I was referring to the 70% of all web servers in the world are vulnerable. So how about a driver's license for the web admins?
Anyone else?
Maybe the questions about the security of IT systems, it have to be absolutely clear that all IT systems are not adequately protected at the moment.
Yeah, and that on the medical devices, I work a lot with those, and it's interesting because when you look at an MRI machine that basically says you're going to die or you're not going to die, what it boils down to is IP enabled. It pushes it directly to someone in the IT administrator's system, and it can easily be modified. And the only reason that was is like so many of these things, why would someone interfere with an MRI machine? And now today we have all kinds of reasons. So one of the focus that we're trying to put on is that particularly the medical devices is to how do you build them without having to rip out 25 million euros worth of equipment. How do you either fix it, which is very difficult, or make sure the next generation doesn't have those same vulnerabilities? It's a very, very difficult thing to do that, and you trickle that down to energy sectors and SCADA devices and industrial control, and you have literally probably, I'd say, close to $1 trillion or euros to try to fix all these things at once. But we need to have a strategy to take us there. Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Yes, sir.
This is Jacoby, Whitehawk Software. Last week in Florida, some teacher in the school had his school computer without a password or with a password, and all kids knew it. One schoolboy went to that computer, changed the background screen, and after that he's now charged with some felony offense and what? I'm not sure if our industry accepts such ridiculous things. I'm not seeing any common sense, and that makes me not look very nicely forward.
Yeah, and I guess that's more of a judicial issue or a legal issue than technical, but if anyone would like to add some extra comments on it.
Yeah, there's a big difference between somebody basically doing the equivalent of digital graffiti and actually taking over somebody's physical presence or affecting their life, and that has to be worked out over time. A lot of this may come from government, it may come from the legal folks out there. It may also come through insurance, where we get better standards and certain minimum things that you have to do in order to have insurance to protect you against identity theft and protect your life. A lot of the standards that we have in place these days in terms of locking your car, locking your house, others come along with insurance, and they've been accepted as best practices. I think we'll see more and more of that as healthcare and other physically oriented sensors that actively control our lives come online.
Do have one more.
Hi, my name is Amir from Citrix. I'm a very young cybersecurity startup based in San Francisco. The thing I'm concerned about is DMCA, copyright, and backdoor access. And what are we looking for in the next 5 years?
Anyone familiar with the DMCA? Or
yeah.
You want to...
Digital Millennium Copyright Act. You guys want to talk about protecting?
Yeah,
root of trusts, things like that. I think we broached some of that, but that's a difficult issue.
Yeah, it's designed to protect intellectual property from companies, and if it's posted somewhere, they have the legal authorization to go in and do certain things. It's been argued for years, privacy, security, and I don't know that any of us have a good answer here today where it might go in 5 years, but I think it would fall in the bucket of privacy, security, and surveillance, all looking at this area, and it's got to be changed in the bottom line.
The issue I have, the same backdoor access is getting used by hackers that we are actually trying to litigate or legally process those information.
Well, that's one of the things we've seen for a long time is individuals that have no rights file a DMCA order and then actually shut down some companies. And it's been extremely difficult. Thank you. Okay. Well, with that, I'd like to thank everyone for participating.